question relates to the problem of audience. Why is it that so many students stay broke even after working hard and juggling classes? I've been there myself, eating ramen, counting every dollar, and wondering why my bank account never seemed to grow. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly why students get stuck in the cycle of being broke, and more importantly, the proven steps you can take right now to change that. By the end, you'll know how to shift your mindset, fix your money habits, and finally build a foundation for financial freedom. Students often stay broke despite hard work, and that is one of the most frustrating realities of college life. You put in long hours studying, maybe pick up a part-time job or even two, and yet when you check your account balance at the end of the week, there's barely enough to cover food, let alone savings. The problem isn't always laziness or lack of effort. In fact, most students are working harder than ever. The issue lies in the mismatch between income, expenses, and the systems students are stuck in. Tuition keeps climbing, books are expensive, and the cost of living rarely matches up with the wages students are offered. The typical part-time job pays minimum wage, and when you subtract rent, groceries, transportation, and a social life that everyone insists is part of the college experience, there's not much left. Even the most disciplined student can feel like they're trapped in a cycle that no amount of budgeting seems to fix. The solution to this problem begins with reframing the way students approach money. It's not just about working harder or trying to squeeze every extra dollar out of a low-paying job. It's about shifting focus from short-term survival to long-term strategy. That means understanding where the leaks are in your financial bucket, where money slips away unnoticed, and how to stop it. For many students, small decisions like eating out 3 times a week, buying the latest gadgets, or upgrading to a more expensive apartment are what keep them in a constant state of being broke. The solution isn't necessarily about cutting all joy out of life, but about creating awareness and balance. Once you can track your spending and actually see the numbers, you realize that even modest adjustments, like cooking at home or sharing streaming services, can add up to meaningful savings. Beyond saving, though, students need to recognize the importance of building skills that allow them to increase income. A part-time job on its own often won't break the cycle, but using college years to pick up high-value skills can. Freelancing, tutoring, editing, or even learning basic digital skills can dramatically increase earning potential while still in school. This doesn't mean taking on more work to the point of burnout, but rather being intentional with the kind of work you do. It's the difference between clocking into a job that pays the same as everyone else versus finding a niche that rewards you more for the effort you put in. That shift in strategy is what helps students move from being perpetually broke to gradually building a cushion. Take an example. Imagine a student named Sarah who works 20 hours a week at a coffee shop making minimum wage. She's pulling in maybe $800 a month after taxes, but her rent and bills alone take $600, leaving her with very little breathing room. She feels broke all the time. Now, Sarah decides to track her expenses for a month and realizes she's spending nearly $200 on takeout and snacks. That's a quarter of her income going into things she could cut in half just by meal prepping. Then, instead of picking up extra shifts, she starts freelancing online by editing essays for other students, something she's already good at. Within a couple of months, she's making an extra $300 a month, and combined with the $100 she saved on food, she's now up $400. That doesn't sound like much at first, but for someone who used to end every month at zero, it's life-changing. It gives her a buffer, reduces her stress, and allows her to start saving, which eventually becomes the foundation of breaking the cycle of being broke. Living on ramen and counting every dollar is more than just a stereotype about students. It's a lived reality for countless young people trying to balance the costs of education with their limited income. The problem is not simply that students have poor spending habits, though that can be a factor. The real issue is that their financial world is built on scarcity, where every purchase feels like a potential risk. When you're operating with such tight margins, the pressure is constant. A simple trip to the grocery store feels like a math test, where you're adding up items in your head and praying the total doesn't exceed what's left in your account. This type of financial stress chips away at your mental health, your ability to focus on school, and even your social life. You feel like you can't say yes to going out with friends because one dinner could mean overdrawing your account. This problem creates a cycle of isolation and stress, which only reinforces the idea that students are destined to struggle until graduation and beyond. The solution lies not in accepting the state as normal, but in adopting strategies that bring back a sense of control, even when money is limited. The first step is awareness. Most students underestimate how much the little things eat away at their budget. A morning coffee here, a few late-night takeout orders there, or even paying full price for textbooks without exploring used options can quietly drain hundreds of dollars every month. Awareness doesn't mean guilt, tripping yourself for every decision, but rather shining a light on the habits that keep you broke. Once you see where the money is going, you can start to make practical adjustments. For example, setting a fixed food budget and committing to meal prep may feel restrictive at first, but it replaces stress with predictability. You know exactly what's coming in and going out, which reduces the anxiety of constantly wondering if you'll have enough. The second part of the solution is creativity. Students often underestimate the resources available to them. Universities and communities are filled with opportunities like free events with food, student discounts, or campus jobs that pay better than off-campus minimum wage gigs. It's not about being cheap, it's about being resourceful. Choosing to lean on those resources can stretch a student's limited budget further without sacrificing quality of life. For instance, instead of spending hundreds on a gym membership, a student might use the campus gym that's already included in tuition. Instead of buying new textbooks every semester, they could use online marketplaces or library reserves. These small shifts help free up cash that can then be redirected into savings or emergencies, which reduces the constant feeling of being one financial hiccup away from disaster. An example makes this clearer. Take James, a college sophomore who lived exactly like this, relying on instant noodles, calculating gas money down to the last mile, and feeling embarrassed every time friends asked him to go out. He thought the only way forward was to take on more hours at his job, but that just left him exhausted and falling behind in classes. The turning point came when he tracked his expenses for 2 months and discovered he was spending nearly $150 on coffee and energy drinks alone. It shocked him because he didn't realize how those quick purchases added up. He decided to invest in a cheap coffee maker and started brewing at home. At the same time, he tapped into his university's tutoring program, which not only gave him a free membership to the campus gym, but also paid him for helping other students with math. Within 3 months, he had shaved nearly $200 off his expenses and added an extra $250 in income. Suddenly, he wasn't just surviving, he had enough to cover his bills and still put a little aside. The constant knot in his stomach loosened because he no longer felt like he was living one mistake away from being broke again. The cycle of being broke has clear causes, and the biggest problem is that students often don't recognize what those causes are until they're already trapped in it. It usually starts small, with the belief that debt is just a normal part of college life. Student loans are presented as unavoidable, credit cards are offered with enticing perks, and everyone around you seems to be doing the same thing, borrowing today and promising themselves they'll deal with it later. Add to that the high cost of living and the pressure to keep up with peers. And suddenly a student who was only supposed to be in debt for tuition is also carrying balances for clothes, electronics, and nights out. The problem compounds when there's no clear plan for repayment, and the interest on loans and credit cards grows faster than income ever could. Many students don't fully understand how compound interest works until it's too late, and they realize that even minimum payments don't make a dent in the principal. At this point, being broke isn't just about not having enough money right now. It's about being locked into a financial system that constantly takes more from you than you can put back in. The solution begins with awareness of these traps and a willingness to step back from the normal cycle that everyone else seems to accept. It's not about refusing to take loans altogether, since for many students that isn't an option, but about being intentional with what you borrow and why. Instead of taking out the maximum loan amount and using the excess for lifestyle expenses, the smarter move is to borrow only what's necessary for tuition and essential costs. The same applies to credit cards. Rather than using them as a way to buy things you can't actually afford, students can use them strategically, making small purchases and paying them off in full to build credit without falling into debt. The solution also involves recognizing that just because something feels normal in college culture doesn't mean it's financially healthy. Skipping a few social outings or resisting the urge to upgrade your phone every year doesn't make you cheap. It makes you someone who's willing to prioritize long-term stability over short-term approval. To break the cycle, students need to adopt a proactive mindset about debt and expenses early on. That means tracking loans carefully, understanding repayment terms, and even exploring ways to minimize costs before borrowing, such as applying for grants, scholarships, or work-study programs. It also means creating a basic budget that reflects actual priorities rather than social pressure. Once students see how much money is going toward interest, fees, or unnecessary purchases, the motivation to change becomes stronger. They begin to realize that avoiding the cycle isn't about deprivation, but about freedom. The freedom to graduate without being crushed under a mountain of debt that dictates every decision afterward. An example of this can be seen in a student named Alex. Like many others, Alex took out the maximum loan amount in his first year because it seemed easier than worrying about budgeting. With the extra money in his account, he upgraded his laptop, went on spring break with friends, and ate out almost every night. By the end of the year, he had racked up not just student loans, but also $2,000 in credit card debt. The payments seemed manageable until he realized how much of his future income would already be spoken for. After a financial literacy workshop at his university, Alex decided to change his approach. He cut back on borrowing, only taking what was needed for tuition, and picked up a campus IT job that gave him steady income and experience. He started using a credit card only for gas and paid it off every month. Within a year, he had avoided adding thousands more to his debt and even built a small emergency fund. The example of Alex shows that breaking the cycle isn't about luck or privilege. It's about recognizing the traps early and making deliberate choices to step out of them. Mindset plays a huge role in money struggles, and the problem many students face is not only the lack of money, but the belief that being broke is just who they are. When you grow up hearing phrases like college students are always poor or being broke is part of the experience, it conditions you to accept struggle as normal. This mindset makes financial stress feel permanent, and it creates a self-fulfilling cycle. If you believe you'll never have enough, you stop looking for ways to improve your situation. You rationalize bad spending habits because you assume they won't make a difference anyway. You avoid saving because you tell yourself there's nothing left to save. You even avoid seeking opportunities to earn more because you're convinced those opportunities aren't for people like you. The result is that you stay stuck, not only because of external circumstances, but because your mindset convinces you that change is impossible. The solution to this problem begins with shifting perspective from scarcity to possibility. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, you begin to pay attention to what's within your control. It's not about pretending money problems don't exist, but about refusing to let those problems define you. A scarcity mindset says, I'm broke, so I can't do anything. A growth mindset says, I don't have much right now, but I can make small changes that build into something bigger. This shift opens up a whole new way of approaching money. Suddenly, saving even $5 feels worthwhile because you view it as proof that you're capable of progress. Tracking expenses stops being about guilt and starts being about awareness. You begin to see each small step, cooking at home, finding a side hustle, applying for scholarships, as a building block rather than a pointless effort. The solution also includes surrounding yourself with examples that reinforce the new mindset. If everyone around you believes that being broke is normal, it becomes harder to break free. But when you listen to podcasts, watch videos, or connect with mentors who show you what's possible, your perspective begins to expand. You start to realize that many people who were once broke made small, consistent changes that transformed their financial situation. By shifting what you consume and who you listen to, you train your mind to look for opportunities instead of excuses. Over time, this creates resilience. Instead of feeling defeated when money is tight, you start asking, what can I do differently? That single question is powerful enough to change the trajectory of your financial life. An example that illustrates this comes from a student named Maria. She entered college with very little money and carried the belief that she would always struggle financially because her family did. She worked long hours at a retail job, spent whatever she earned to relieve stress, and told herself saving was pointless because the amounts would be too small to matter. One semester, she attended a financial literacy workshop where the instructor emphasized mindset as the foundation of money management. Something clicked for her. She started by committing to save just $10 a week, no matter what. At first, it seemed insignificant, but after a couple of months, she had over $80 saved, which gave her a sense of accomplishment she had never felt before. That small shift encouraged her to look at other areas of her life. She realized she could reduce her spending on ride shares by learning the bus system, which saved her an extra $50 each month. Inspired by her progress, she decided to offer babysitting on weekends, which not only added income but gave her flexibility compared to her retail job. Within a year, Maria went from someone who believed she was destined to stay broke to someone who had savings, reduced stress, and confidence in her ability to manage money. The change didn't start with a sudden influx of cash. It started with her decision to believe that small steps mattered and that her financial story could be different. Fixing money habits can break the cycle. And the problem is that many students don't realize how much their day-to-day behaviors shape their financial reality. It's not usually the big expenses like tuition that throw students off balance. Those are predictable and often covered by loans or family support. The real issue comes from the small, consistent habits that eat away at their budget without them noticing. Swiping a debit card for coffee every morning, paying for multiple streaming subscriptions, or using credit cards impulsively for small purchases all add up. These habits create a pattern where money is constantly flowing out faster than it comes in, and students feel broke even if they're technically earning enough to cover their essential bills. Because the spending is tied to routine and comfort, it doesn't feel harmful in the moment, but over time it locks students into a cycle where they can't build savings, can't get ahead, and are left feeling like they're working hard with nothing to show for it. The solution begins with identifying and rewiring those habits. Instead of trying to overhaul everything at once, students can start by choosing one area of their financial life to focus on. For example, if eating out is the biggest drain, the first habit to change might be cooking 3 meals at home each week. Once that becomes routine, they can move on to the next area, like limiting impulse purchases by waiting 24 hours before buying anything non-essential. This step-by-step approach is more sustainable because it replaces destructive habits with constructive ones, rather than leaving a vacuum that feels restrictive. Another powerful solution is automation. Setting up automatic transfers to savings or automatic bill payments reduces the chance of forgetting and builds consistency without relying on willpower alone. Over time, these small systems reshape the way students handle money, creating habits that make financial progress the default rather than the exception. The solution also requires reframing habits as part of identity. When students begin to see themselves as someone who manages money well, their behaviors follow. Instead of saying, "I'm terrible with money," they shift to, "I'm learning to handle money better every day." This mindset change makes it easier to stay consistent because it's no longer just about restricting yourself. It's about aligning your actions with the kind of person you want to be. Even small victories like sticking to a weekly budget or resisting the urge to overspend on a night out reinforce the idea that good money habits are part of who you are. Over time, these repeated actions build confidence, and confidence builds momentum. An example of this can be seen in a student named Daniel. He was constantly broke, even though he worked 20 hours a week and covered his basic expenses. At first, he thought the problem was that he simply wasn't making enough, but when he tracked his spending for a month, he discovered a different story. Nearly $250 of his monthly income went to food delivery, coffee, and random late-night purchases online. These didn't feel like major expenses at the time, but together they drained his budget. Daniel decided to focus on just one habit: cutting down food delivery. He committed to cooking at least 4 dinners a week and packing leftovers for lunch. At first, it felt inconvenient, but within the first month, he saved almost $120. Encouraged by that success, he tackled another habit: impulse shopping. He began following a 24-hour rule where he couldn't buy anything non-essential without waiting a full day. This simple change eliminated dozens of unnecessary purchases. By the end of the semester, Daniel had reduced his monthly spending by over $300 and set up an automatic transfer of a $50 a month into savings. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving from paycheck to paycheck. He had money set aside, less stress, and a sense of control over his finances. His story shows that fixing money habits isn't about cutting everything fun out of life, but about making conscious choices that align with long-term stability rather than short-term convenience. Building a foundation for financial freedom is possible. Yet the problem for most students is that they don't see beyond the immediate struggle of making ends meet. When your life revolves around rent, tuition, and trying to scrape together enough for groceries, the idea of financial freedom feels distant, almost unrealistic. Students often assume that freedom is something you achieve only after landing a high-paying job post-graduation, and even then, it feels like a dream reserved for a select few. This short-term focus keeps them locked in survival mode, where the priority is just to get through the week or month. The real issue is that without laying down a foundation early, students carry the same habits, debts, and anxieties into adulthood, where the financial stakes become even higher. Instead of graduating into opportunity, they graduate into more pressure, and the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck continues well beyond their student years. The solution begins with recognizing that financial freedom isn't a single event, but a gradual process built on small, consistent steps. Even students with very limited income can start developing habits that form the groundwork for long-term success. The first step is learning to save regularly, no matter the amount. Setting aside $10 or $20 a month may not seem like much, but it creates the discipline of paying yourself first. Over time, that discipline is more valuable than the actual amount saved because it establishes the behavior of prioritizing your future self. Another step is learning to budget effectively. Budgeting isn't about restriction, it's about clarity. When you know exactly where your money is going, you gain control, and control is the foundation of freedom. Building credit responsibly is also part of this process. Students who use credit cards wisely and pay off balances in full begin building a strong credit history, which opens doors later for better loan rates, housing opportunities, and even jobs. Each of these steps may feel small in isolation, but together they create the pillars of a financial structure that can support freedom. The solution also includes looking for ways to invest in yourself and your skills, because financial freedom isn't just about saving money. It's also about increasing your earning potential. While in college, students have unique access to resources like free courses, internships, workshops, and networking events. Taking advantage of these opportunities builds human capital, which pays dividends later. Developing skills that are in demand, whether in tech, writing, design, or another field, allows students to create additional income streams beyond traditional jobs. Even something as simple as freelancing a few hours a week can help a student practice managing money, create savings, and gain confidence. The foundation of financial freedom is built when you combine smart money habits with skill development, creating both stability and opportunity. An example that illustrates this is a student named Kevin. At first, Kevin believed financial freedom was something he would have to wait for until years after graduation. He was focused only on surviving college, paying bills, and working part-time at a retail store. But after attending a personal finance seminar, he decided to shift his approach. Kevin started by setting up an automatic savings transfer of $20 from every paycheck, no matter how small it felt. After 3 months, he had saved $120, which gave him a sense of progress he had never experienced before. Encouraged, he created a simple budget using a free app, which showed him that he was overspending on subscription services. By cutting out 2 unused subscriptions, he redirected that money into his savings. At the same time, Kevin began teaching himself basic coding through free online resources and took on small freelance projects for local businesses. Within a year, Kevin had not only built an emergency fund of several $100s, but was also earning extra income through freelancing, which gave him flexibility and confidence. What started as small steps, saving $20, cutting unnecessary expenses, and learning a new skill, became the building blocks of his financial foundation. Kevin's example shows that financial freedom doesn't happen overnight, but when students make intentional choices and take consistent action, they lay down the framework for a future where money is a tool, not a constant source of stress. So quick recap, students stay broke not because they're lazy, but because the system and their habits keep them stuck. We covered why hard work alone isn't enough, how I personally went through the Raymond and dollar counting phase, the traps that cause the cycle of being broke, why mindset makes all the difference, how fixing daily money habits changes everything. And finally, how to build the foundation for financial freedom starting right now. If this gave you even one useful takeaway, make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below about which habit you're going to start working on today. And if you found this valuable, you won't want to miss my next video where I break down the biggest money mistakes students make with credit cards and how to avoid them before they cost you thousands. See you there.